Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Don't Praise the Machine. This is episode number 173. As always, I'm one of your hosts. I go by the name Alexander Apricot Pepsi Holland, and I'm sat in Berlin, Germany, and sitting across from me digitally, as he is every single week, down there in deep down dirty Melbourne town. It's the number one tenured professor of podcastery. He's got to be the one called
John Junior Boost Maloney.
John Junior Boost Maloney. We are deep in Olympics fever, deep in Parisian Olympics fever. Olympics is going on. Everybody's losing their Olympic minds. I've got to ask you, how much do you take an interest? How much do you care about the Olympics these days?
Good question. I was asking other people that the other day because I thought, in this fragmented attention economy, are events like the Olympics less of a unifying force than they used to be for people watching around the world? Because we've all got, different interests, different media sources. It used to be a really safe bet at work.
Yeah.
If it was an Olympic year, you were around the water cooler, you'd say, did you watch the synchronized swimming? Did you watch the canoe slalom? And people would say, absolutely, that guy from Swaziland was great. I don't even think that's what it's called anymore. Was great, and he's become a legend for the next 15 minutes. Or, did you watch the awesome foursome in Australia? They were the rowing champions.
Yeah.
But now I think it's kind of less, I don't know, maybe just one of many things going on in the world. But yeah, I like it. I find it kind of soothing to watch just people doing something very well whilst I'm splayed on my couch with hot sauce on my shirt.
I think you're right. I think you're right that it has... It feels very different to when I was a kid, and I was asking people over the weekend if that's something that's universal. Although a lot of the people that I was with over the weekend are a few years younger than me, but I remember, the first one I remember, so you and me are both 41. I remember the first Olympics that I have in my memory is when I was 10 years old, and that was the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona.
Yeah.
Which, and I was fortunate enough just last year to go to Barcelona for the first time, and that was my reference point for the city. That was why I knew this. Everything about Barcelona to me was just the 92 Summer Olympics. So that's how powerful it is as a branding exercise, is that I got to Barcelona, and my dear friend Dom said, do you want to go to the museum? Do you want to really experience Catalan culture? I said, whoa, shut up, dickhead. We're going to the Olympic Village. And he said, fine. And he took me up, and it was great. I loved it. It was just incredible being there. And I remembered watching it as a kid. I remember that Barcelona Olympics was the one where the archer released the arrow with the flame on it, which shot and lit the Olympic cauldron. And so I went to the Olympic Stadium. We could walk in.
To do that.
We could walk into the Olympic Stadium, which is open, and we went to the swimming pool, which is the swimming pool that then Kylie Minogue shot that video called Slow for. People might remember a few years ago. She's displayed it. Slow. So that's, so we hung out there. I remember that really super positive. And I remember, as you say, it was this very unifying event because we didn't have the internet. So everybody just was watching the exact same. Everybody was watching it. Then 96 was Atlanta. Same again. Everybody was super excited. And then, of course, Australia, Sydney hosted the 2000. And that was just such a massive deal for us in Australia. We always feel like this little nation trying to punch above its weight. We don't really have a very, very developed culture of our own, because the white settlers only turned up a little bit over 200 years ago, and we're desperate to prove on the world stage that we are somebody. And I know so many people who went over in the year 2000, because we're obviously in Adelaide, and I remember my dear friend Claire O'Shea went over, and my cousin Beth was living there, and my cousin my cousin Oliver went over as well. They all were in Sydney for it, and it was a huge thing. And then I think Juan Antonio Samaranch declared it Sydney the best Olympics
Games
ever.
And
then
which
go
I
on.
later learned is just kind of something that he says, but
It's a tick.
we take that kind of thing very seriously in Australia. We're like, did you hear that, buckheads?
It's
Best ever.
it's a nervous tick that he has. He says it at dinner parties as well. He just goes, I declare this Olympics the best Olympics ever. They just give him a little pat on the head. It says it on the bus when he's getting on. But then we get to Athens in 2004.
Yeah.
And suddenly it starts getting a little bit more complicated and controversial. This thing that I thought was just fun times and party, because I didn't really understand things like national budgets and things like this.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand.
Bribery.
Because, of course, Athens, there was a lot of controversy about. So I read that the budget. I don't know what the original budget was, but the final estimated cost ballooned to around $9 billion, which had long-term economic repercussions for Greece.
Wow. Fuck,
and
that is a lot of money.
Yeah, and then there was the financial crisis that came that Greece was embroiled in as well, and then after Athens, and Athens also produced a lot of what we now know as white elephants, which is when they spend billions of dollars on facilities that just get used for 2 weeks and then never again.
Yeah.
And then you had Beijing in 2008, and obviously China is politically quite a thorny country, and people said this is too much of them showing soft power. We shouldn't be minimizing what these people do in terms of human rights, and we're making them look like everything's fine and dandy. Then London was pretty beloved, but I was living in London at the time that the London Games were on, and there was a lot of local discussion about the fact that the people of Stratford and the people of Hackney, where it was being hosted, really just didn't have anything to do with it, that you could just spend billions plopping an Olympics in a community and basically just say, this isn't really for you, get out of here. Then Rio. I didn't watch any of Rio. I don't remember a single thing about it. Do you remember Rio Games?
While you were talking, I had to look up where it was because I was like, I can't even remember now what was going on in 2016. Maybe COVID has just overwritten so many things that I just can't recall. But I don't. It just didn't register really, and I guess it would have seemed. I have vague memories of thinking this all seems pretty weird because it was in the midst of a pandemic concern. And I guess it was fairly pared back for that reason.
Well, so that was Tokyo. So Rio was 2016, and then 2020 was Tokyo, and then they had to hold it back for a year, didn't they? And then it was meant to be 2020, and then they did it a pared back one or a not a lot of audience one in 2021. But again, I don't remember any of that either. I wasn't paying any attention to it.
No. I think I don't know if that's a life stage thing or if it represents kind of a cultural shift that we just don't give as much of a fuck about the Olympics anymore. Or maybe we just grew up at a time when people disproportionately did give a fuck because it was going to be in Sydney. So we switched on as a culture for that.
That's a good point.
And had Nikki Webster I think she performed Strawberry Kisses at the opening ceremony.
That is an excellent memory.
Well, I would like to say that was just an off the cuff memory thing, but I actually did when I watched the opening ceremony of this current games, I thought that's interesting that they've got Celine Dion. Okay, she performs in French, but she's actually Canadian, and they had Lady Gaga, who was neither. And I thought, isn't it more of an opportunity to showcase local talent, or did we just insist on subjecting everyone to this no-name Nikki Webster who was like flash in the pan? And then I thought, because for anyone who doesn't remember, which will be most people, she was this kind of tween, pop sensation in Australia.
but she wasn't when the opening ceremony. So she was in the opening ceremony, and she'd been chosen. She'd been picked out of a handful of young girls to be the girl that represented a sort of childlike wonder as she explored, as she sort of swam through the history of Australia. And she was on this, she was going, running around the stadium and looking all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and starry-eyed and going, oh, wow, Australia, what an incredible land. And
Dreiser bones. Amazing. Yeah.
And then she went famously up on the cables and started flying through the sky like a beautiful angel. And then she launched her pop career off the back of that attention that she got. And then, so then she did Strawberry Kisses. Guys, go and just Google Strawberry Kisses by Nikki Webster. And then if you want to have a real complicated morning, look up the FHM cover that Nikki Webster did just a few years later. Do you remember that?
Vaguely. Tell me
Google
more
that.
about that.
Just Google it. Just Google FHM cover and then tell the audience. Put Nikki Webster FHM cover or FHM edition and then tell audience what's happening.
Put me on a watch list or something. So she was, so Nikki.
For Him magazine, I believe the acronym stood for. For Him magazine.
For Him magazine. Okay, there you go. 2000. This is just from Wikipedia. 2005 to present. In early 2005, she did this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, Webster appeared on the May 2005 cover of FHM after the magazine approached her to do the shoot as a celebration of turning 18. Great stuff.
What a time. 2005.
And then she was voted number 7 in the FHM Australia 100 Sexiest Women 2005 list.
Wow.
Even though she was barely of age.
Wow.
And that's the kind of nation we probably still are. But I looked up Nikki Webster because I thought, what the hell has she been doing in the intervening 20-odd years?
Yeah.
Looked her up on Spotify, 47.7 thousand monthly listeners. I thought, that seems very high. Who the fuck is listening to Nikki Webster? And then I thought maybe I should. Maybe I'm like outing myself as a musical goofball, saying, "Do you guys remember Nikki Webster?" And everyone's going, "Yeah, of course." What do you mean remember? She's huge.
I'm looking at her now, and it's strange looking at her because I haven't looked at her picture I haven't thought of her in years. Mind you, she must every 4 years, she must get a bunch of media requests to do interviews, and just every fucking Australian breakfast TV program must every 4 years go, guys, you remember her as the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young girl who opened the Sydney Olympics. She warmed our hearts in the year 2000. We've all got such a strong, beautiful memory. And what's she been up? What's she been up to these days? I know you want to find out. Well, you don't have to worry about it. She's here with us today, ladies and gentlemen. Nikki Webster's joining us on the satellite. Nikki, woo! Now, Nikki,
probably every time there's an Olympics, cast your mind back to the turn of the millennium.
Absolutely. So I've just looked her up, and it's strange seeing her because she has a woman's face and head now. It's that kind of youthful thing about her. Have you seen? I'll bring her IMDb.
That's what the FHM interviewer said. Strange looking at you because you've got a woman's head and face.
Yeah, she looks. Yeah. Can you see the IMDb photograph of her?
Let's have a look. Nikki Webster.
She kind of looks like a mum. Like she looks like she could be. It's so strange. That's making me feel very old seeing Nikki. Nikki Webster. Yeah.
She's only, there you go. I mean, I forget that I was just not that much older. So she's born in 1987.
Yeah.
And she looks her age, I would say, in that IMDb photo.
Does she have kids? Nikki Webster. I didn't know that this was going to become the Nikki Webster podcast, which is making me just laugh a lot in my head.
Episode 173, Strawberry Kisses.
But what I did have on my notes, John, is that you were being touted as the next Paralympic swim star hope. They called you the Golden Hope. They called you Australia's last chance.
Yeah. Sorry, everyone.
Do you want to tell people how because you've not mentioned your swimming history a lot on the show because I banned it and I have
I'm
unbanned.
sick of just hours of me on the cutting room floor going, and now let me tell you about 50-meter breaststroke.
It was breaststroke. That's right. So when
it's funny actually. That was my fastest stroke, at least in terms of rankings. Anyway,
when did you realize that you were okay at swimming, and then when did somebody say you're the last hope for this nation, John? This nation's going down the toilet, and you can save us.
Give us something to believe again.
Said, would it have been Keating or would
that's
it
right, or an early term John Howard. Said, look, people have just absorbed the goods and services tax. They need something to make them happy again.
After he broke that promise, he promised he would never do it. He said, look, I know that you're all reeling from my broken promise, but I got another promise for you right now that I promise won't be broken. John Maloney's going to win gold.
Exactly. And I finished him. It took 7 more years, but he was voted out because of that. When I was like an adolescent, I dabbled in a lot of different sports, wheelchair basketball. I did a little bit of wheelchair racing. I did some swimming. I even did shot put, discus, javelin, these kinds of things. And then as I kind of got older, I realized that I was showing some promise in swimming and quite enjoying it. And so probably by the time I was in my early to mid-teens, I was kind of getting more and more into it. And then I was attending competitions when I was, would have been 16. I went off to Braunschweig in Germany, actually.
Wow.
The anglicization of which is Brunswick, where I live now, just to haunt me.
I didn't know that.
Just as a daily reminder of my failed potential. and went to Bangkok for the kind of Asian Games, essentially, and went to Sheffield in England a couple of times, and just with swimming. And then they said to me, you should basically plan to be in the 2000 Sydney Paralympics.
Wow. So they said Sydney. So you would have been an 18-year-old competing.
That's right. But it required me to really kind of go that extra step. Probably I would have had to pull out of school and, go to the Institute of Sport or something and do year 12 over 2 years. And I was always kind of like more into the experience of, going to competitions and traveling and stuff. I was just kind of not that one-eyed about being the best swimmer that there ever was or anything. And so I had a chat with my parents, and they said, there's probably no future for you in being a disabled swimmer. And that's fairly sound, I think. And then they said, you're on track to finish school with all your mates, and that's probably a bit more important.
Yeah.
And what do you think? And I said, yeah, that sounds about right. So then I kept competing, but that was kind of the beginning of me becoming the failure that you see today. And it was funny, actually. I remember every time the Olympics is on, I sort of, particularly when I tune into the Paralympics, I remember tuning in to Sydney and even Athens after that, and seeing all these people who I'd come up with and gone to, shared athletes villages with and stuff. And there they were kind of doing the rounds at the opening ceremony. And I was like, I could have been a contender.
Do you know where any of them are now? Did they continue in a sporting realm?
It's a good question. One of them continued in swimming for quite a while and then ran for the Liberal Party as a local member. I don't know what he's doing now. And someone else, I mean, I might have even come across, what's his name, Dylan Alcott, who more recently became the Australian of the Year and is dating glamorous sexologist Chantal Otten.
Wow.
And that made me think, fucking should have stuck with it. But when I did it, the chances of becoming Australian of the Year and shagging a sexologist were very slim. So I had to go on the information that I had to hand at that time. So yeah, it's funny. I do occasionally think back to it, and I was every time I'm in the pool or at the beach, I think, I think back to, because you still remember, it's like riding a bike. You still remember how to swim quite well, except that you remember how much easier it was when you were 18 and did it 7 times a week.
I was thinking as I prepared for this week's episode, and I was thinking about you swimming. I was trying to remember the last time that we were both submerged in water together, because that the swimming thing would come up more if you and I bathed together more.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we often
putting it in.
But
yeah.
we typically spend time.
But I insist on bathing separately. Is that where you're going?
I keep it as a private matter now as an adult. Because I mean, we're typically together in cities. That's why now. But I do remember our youthful pool days, and I'd say show us a tumble turn.
Yeah, do a tumble turn for us. Do some butterfly. Do a cannonball. That wasn't part of my professional skill set, and then I mean it was quite a thing when I was little when I was a kid, because you'd be away in a different country without your parents, and that was quite exhilarating. But well,
you remember when you went to was it Braunschweig?
Yeah,
Braunschweig.
That's right.
You went in 1999, and you and I had started to become good friends by this stage, because I was known as the weird little nerd that was deeply into German electronic pioneers band Kraftwerk. And this was, of course, before this was really nascent MP3 days. Nascent's the right word there, isn't it, John? Sort of developing.
Yeah.
Excellent. And so, CDs were still a huge thing in 1999. And you said to me, or maybe I said to you, if you were in a record store, could you get me a Kraftwerk CD, because they probably have the German version that we don't. I mean, it was even probably difficult to get Kraftwerk CDs even in the English versions back then. And you did, and you bought it for me. You brought me back Electric Cafe, I think, which is I think it's their 1986 album. Yeah, and so I still have that in Prospect. I have the Electric Cafe Kraftwerk, and I was so moved by what you did that I said, John, as a thank you for this, I promise to live in Germany for 11 years, and you can hold me to a promise. That's one thing I'll say about me.
You can occasionally come visit as a thanks for buying me this CD.
And sleep on my green felt couch in the back of my living room. We can bathe
together.
And then the other thing I had here, John, prepared for the episode, which I thought would be a real lot of fun, and I actually have had this on my notes for a few weeks, so I thought it'd be fun to launch during the Olympiad. The games of the 33rd Olympiad are currently happening in Paris. I had to do the Roman numeral translator in Google, because it gave me the Roman numerals, and I got absolutely no idea what that says, and then it translated to 33.
Yeah.
So I thought we could start by having a bit of fun talking about some discontinued Olympic sports, because of course they trial sports. Sometimes they'll trial them as an exhibition sport for a year, and then they go, no, that didn't really work. And sometimes they're there for longer, and they fall out of popularity, or there might be some other politics that I'm not aware of that causes them to. I mean, essentially, if it's unpopular, it's going to go, isn't it? It's not like they're going to just go, oh yeah, no 100-meter sprint these guys this year, guys. Sorry,
that's right.
We're putting in ballroom dancing, and so I thought start with some dusty old ones. So between 1896 and 1920 was the last one. You could compete in tug of war.
That's great.
So maybe some of my international listeners, tug of war, I'm sure you've got your own word for it in your language. It's the thing where there's a long, thick piece of rope and two groups of people hold either end of the rope, and then there's a line in the middle, and there might be a flag in the middle of the rope, and one team tries to pull. It's a show of strength and coordination, trying to pull the other team towards them, pull towards one another. So they had tug of war. They also had ballooning, piloting gas balloons at the 1900 games. The winning team traveled about 768 miles in almost 36 hours. Yeah, but hot air ballooning as an Olympic sport.
That's very very of its time, isn't it? It's very like world exhibition. Some guy with a monocle and a big handlebar moustache.
And they also had, between 1912 and 1948, they had art competitions. So there was painting and sculpture. And one of the reasons that they stopped doing it was because back then the Olympics were it was all an amateur thing. It was meant to be amateurs competing, and there were too many artists who were joining the Olympics who were actually professional artists, and they just said, this is not in the spirit of the games, and so they got rid of it. But some people would compete in both the sporting part and the art part. Some people that fancied themselves quite the Renaissance man or woman would say, I'm going to do tug of war and then sculpture.
That's right. So I looked that up too. They had architecture, literature, music, painting, and sculpture.
How do you win in in builds?
And I think they all had to be inspired by sport. So maybe in architecture you'd be competing with designs for a stadium or something. And in painting you'd obviously be doing, a picture of a watercolor of a boxer or something like that. And they called it, because there was 5 different disciplines, they called it the pentathlon of the muses. And I read about this guy, as you say, some people competed in both. This guy, Walter Winans, who's the only person to win gold medals for both art and sport.
Wow.
Who won a gold medal in shooting running deer. I don't know, that might also be an extinct sport because I'm not sure you shoot live game anymore at the Olympics. and then, which I don't know, maybe we should reintroduce that. And then he got a gold medal for his sculpture, which was called an American Trotter in the 1912 Olympics. But it's weird, isn't it, that whole thing, which you don't really hear about anymore. And people who've kind of come of age later than us, any later than us wouldn't really maybe know about it. But right up until the 90s, there was a kind of hot debate about amateurs in sports versus professional sports people. And it was a big difference between you kind of, like you'd have people in the NBA, and then there was this controversy about whether those same people could compete in the basketball team at the Olympics and so on. And I mean, for various, I suppose, contractual reasons and others, that still happens. But the main tension in those days was whether it was something that was only for amateurs or whether it was professionals. And I think that comes from a kind of British sentiment, which the guy who started the whole thing, Pierre de Coubertin, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, which I almost certainly am, but it's this kind of aristocratic idea that, you should just be able to do sports and able to recite poetry and able to, be good at everything as a kind of function of being a well-rounded aristocratic gentleman. And they regarded like training and practicing as a form of cheating, basically. And it's kind of as a like a bit of a crude perversion of that well-roundedness.
Not in the spirit. Getting too good at one thing.
Yeah, that's right. Like anyone could be great at cricket if they practiced every day, but the trick is to kind of be someone who, just wanders down from the gentleman's club and has a few bowls.
It should all be much more nonchalant than
that's
that.
Right. Exactly. Which I kind of like. And, part of me when I was reading about this was thinking, wouldn't that be nice if you just got a bunch of people who were like weekend sports team people to compete and then on the global stage?
I have here some of the more recent ones that have been in and out. So
okay,
starting with the ones that got kicked
I'm
out.
really interested in this.
Yeah, so baseball was introduced in 92 and then it was removed after Beijing in 2008. Okay. But then it came back for Tokyo, but then Paris said no. So baseball's gone. Karate debuted in Tokyo at the last Olympics, but they didn't like that. So get out of here. No more karate.
Right.
And then here are a bunch of ones that have been added. So badminton was only added in 92. Beach volleyball was added in 96. We all love the beach volleyball because you got the best bottoms in the games. That's what nobody wants to say, but
best human butts.
It's got the best human butts in the sand. Then we had taekwondo came in 2000. Next one surprised me. There was no women's pole vault until Sydney in 2000. So pole vault was exclusively a male competition, and then they introduced the women's competition in 2000.
The possibility of knackering yourself pole vaulting was part of the sport. It was considered a key part of the sport.
It was all about having a bit of skin in the game. And then when women said we'll do it, we'll be like, well, what's the point? You're not really risking much here. Mountain biking came in longer ago than I thought. Mountain biking came in 96 in Atlanta.
Okay.
And then these are some of the fun ones. So these are some of the the cool ones that get the kids in. So BMX racing.
Hacky sack. Yeah, okay. BMX racing. Yeah, so how long's that been around?
BMX racing came in 2008 in Beijing. Then in 2020 in Tokyo, they had surfing, which again, I didn't pay attention, so I didn't notice that. But then this one's the best one, John, which is coming in Paris, which I don't know if you came across this, but man, am I excited. I'm not sure if I've caught any of this one yet, so I'm going to have a look straight after. Would you please welcome to the Games of the 33rd Olympiad for its first ever appearance in Olympic Games, breakdancing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I made a promise that I would watch it, and I haven't yet, but I'll have to check it out at some point because I thought, that's a real, kind of attempt by old people scratching their heads to do a cool young sport. I mean, not sure what I'm sure they exist, these kind of rules for how you tell the difference between two very good breakdancers.
Yeah.
I guess it's like a form of gymnastics, essentially, except for played over lame hip hop. But
I didn't think of that. I didn't think of the fact that the music will be the music being played. That will be quite a different music for Olympic. I mean, I'm trying to think. Music plays during the gymnastics, doesn't it? That's part of the floor routine. That's to music. Yep. And then synchronized swimming.
The power.
Yeah.
That kind of shit.
And then synchronized swimming is to music. And is the dressage with the horses, is that to music or maybe not? Maybe that's just...
I'm not sure.
But,
no, I don't think it is.
But what kind of rap filth are they just going to be blasting out? The latest Ice Spice trap hit. It'll be something about shaking your booty or something about toting guns around.
They should reintroduce they should enforce the amateur/professional rule in respect of the breaking background music. So you can't have any known artists. You just
have to have under 10,000 monthly plays on Spotify.
Exactly. Just one of the judges has to go.
Yeah. It should be that one of your crew has to do beatboxing, and that's the only thing you're allowed. I mean, I'm disappointed that the other three...
hype manning as an Olympic sport.
I'm disappointed that the other three elements of the hip hop quartet aren't there. So why don't we also have DJing, graffiti writing, and rapping? Why don't
that
we
would be cool. At the Paris Olympics, you have like a big graffiti wall.
Yeah.
And then the judges are just taking notes. Yeah, that's good piece work.
What about rap battling? Come on, like throw up your best. You have Eminem versus Jay-Z. Oh, well, that wouldn't be Eminem versus Jay-Z because they're from the same nation. These don't make the ones that I've written down. I just realized don't make sense because everybody's American. I was going to say Kendrick versus Drake, but that wouldn't make.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Drake's
Canadian, so that'd be right.
Good point. I didn't think of that. Okay, there you go. Beautiful. So that would be the ultimate Kendrick versus Drake. For the battle, and imagine, and what you would do as well is you'd have the audience actually form a tiny little circle around the cipher, and so there'd just be 50,000 people just surrounding Drake and Kendrick as they just go at each other for gold, for national glory.
And I'm looking at the sports for this year. They've got swimming, but I don't know whether that includes synchronized swimming. Is that still something that people do at the Olympics?
I think synchronized swimming, I didn't come across the removal of synchronized swimming. I came across the removal of solo synchronized swimming, which was a thing temporarily, and people said, that doesn't make any sense. And then they said, nah, it's synchronized to the music. And they went, They went, nah, it's out.
They said, this is just someone flopping around in a pool. That's not anything.
It's made me think of that synchronized diving, which is hilarious. The first time I saw that, I just thought, this is so bizarre because it doesn't really, like, synchronizing something seems like a party trick. It doesn't seem like something that's connected to sporting prowess. It seems like... I remember saying, "Oh, look, it's the synchronized diving," and I'm like, "Why the fuck do I care if they can do it at the exact same time? I don't care. Just do your best dive."
It also doesn't look, because it's not like if it was like 40 people abreast of each other who all had to dive in sync, or if they made like a Mexican wave as they dove, that would be cool. But just like a couple of people diving at the same time, why is that a thing?
Yeah.
Also, golf, it doesn't.
Is golf still in it?
Seem to me.
Because
golf's apparently in it. And I've noticed you've got karate must have come back according to the list on the Olympics.com website. Judo and karate, but no. Oh no, taekwondo's in there. Okay. There you go. And is boxing in here? Yep, boxing's there. So a fair few punchy sports, which I like to see. I think they used to have, I think they did used to have shooting of live game at the Olympics, which is interesting. I mean, these days they have it when the equestrian horses have a fall, but it's not part of the competitive aspect of the sport. I mean, that also is a kind of weird addition because it's like nothing else involves animals. Like, and part of what you're judging is like, I always watch that and think, this is just like a posh dog show. Like, why do I care that this horse is dancing? It can't really be, it's not supposed to, it's a horse. I think they should be enjoying it.
I think they should have bear dancing, like Russian bear dancing.
Yeah,
where there's just Europe, like former Soviet countries and China, just like just one handler angrily whipping this giant poor brown bear with a muzzle on. and the commentary would be wild on that. Yeah, he's doing the Lindy hop, doing the cha cha.
This is a beautiful bear.
So I can't wait to see. Yeah, what? It's so strange. Yeah, how they put in how they keep the kids interested. Reminded me a little bit of Eurovision, where to keep everyone interested, they just keep adding nations that aren't in. Just go. Oh yeah, just put Australia into Eurovision. It's similar. Yeah,
just get bums on seats.
Just put breakdancing in.
Yeah,
breakdancing.
Tug of war they should bring back.
Tug of war would be great. It's
very whimsical.
Yeah, they had pistol.
They used to have.
They pistol dueling.
I just had the same thought. They had pistol dueling. So how did that work?
It worked. They had wax bullets and a shitload of elaborate armor, and so 2 men. I'm assuming I'm just going off what I've seen in cowboy movies. I'm assuming that they would start stepping. They would be back to back, facing away from each other, and then they start stepping away, and then at some point they whip around and go pew.
Yeah.
And so they had. It
has to be at sundown.
It has to be at sundown. and they had to come swinging through those barn doors out of a part of the judging was how you came through a saloon door out onto the main street.
Exactly. That'd be great. And then one of the judges has to play the role of bartender and say, "We don't like your kind around here." And then you interrupt someone's poker game.
You have to. The first thing you do is you have to. The bartender judge is wiping down the bar, and then you first begin by taking a shot of whiskey, and then you hock to her in the spittoon, and they measure how close you got, and then you mosey on through the saloon door, and they check for swing and spring, how much goes through.
The judge is just going, "Look how bow-legged he is. Beautiful form."
And then you use a whole bunch of cowboy slang, "Cod's on it."
Cod's on it. Have a pretend argument about your mining claim.
You say, and then you have to you pre-prepare a little speech, and the judges are noting it. And you're saying, "What's a low down, good for nothing dog like you doing in my town on a night like tonight?" Spill on the ground. And then you go, pew, pew, pew. So that was, wax bullets and a ton of
good
elaborate armor. And there
you go.
That's everything that I ever wrote about the Olympics on my .txt file, John.
That's yeah, there you go. That's great. Another interesting fact that I learned was that in 2010, only 3 countries, Brunei, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, had never sent women to the games. But apparently now everyone has, including Saudi Arabia was the last holdout. But they've sent a couple of women to different events now. So that's a nice little tidbit. But I think what struck me in terms of the future of the Olympics is that in 2032 it's going to be back in Australia. Those of you who
is that true?
Live in Australia may not know. Yeah, it's going to be in Brisbane.
When did that get announced?
I didn't realize this until I was doing research for this, but and I thought, what? And I said to someone, walking around Paris makes me think human beings are amazing, and so does walking around Brisbane, but not in a good way.
But that's crazy.
Yeah, it's not.
How did I not know that?
There you go.
2032 Summer Olympics, officially the games of, Brisbane 2032. Wow, where are we going to...
getting to my Brisbane heads, I love it. But
when are we going to be...
Yeah, there you go.
We'll have to do like a Roy and HG. We'll have to go over for the podcast to Brisbane.
Totally.
John,
yeah.
Wow, 2032. how will life be different? Everything will be, you'll be competing with drones in 2032. There'll be drone delivery competitions, drone food delivery.
Totally. Yeah. There'll be AI art competitions. There'll be probably AI athletes.
That would be so great. Robot athletes.
I mean, this time around, everyone is getting, I don't know how they did this, but everyone who gets a medal, each medal contains a small part of the Eiffel Tower. So they must have cut a bit off. Or maybe there's a spare bit somewhere that they never used in the tower. And they just put it in each of the, like melted it down. It's probably like a tiny fragment, put it in each of the medals.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe in Queensland you could have the big pineapple. You could just get a little chunk off, put it in the medals.
Yeah, that would be great. And yeah, you'd hope it was a little bit of the Eiffel Tower and that the tower doesn't fall on anyone over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
Just one of the legs,
unsound.
one of the legs just collapses. Sacre bleu, they will say. Sacre bleu. Oh, snap, John.
We've both got a nuanced understanding of French culture.
Absolutely, yeah.
They'll spit out their croissants.
Probably,
Sacre bleu.
Probably Pepe Le Pew will be there trying to hold up the Eiffel Tower when it collapses. Well, John,
this is a disaster.
This is a disaster. Sacre bleu. Well, John, this has been a great Olympics. This is our first Olympics as Don't Praise the Machine.
That's true, yeah.
And I think we've become an authority on it. I think we're ready to take over the mantle of Roy and HG. Do you know, for anyone who doesn't know, Roy and HG are an Australian sporting comedy duo that have been very influential to both myself and John, and Don't Praise the Machine, the podcast. Have you seen Roy and HG? Do you know if they're doing anything this summer Olympics Games?
I saw a little clip of them. I should go back and see what they've been up to, but I saw a little clip of them recently where they were talking about how the Seine had been cleaned.
Right,
and,
that's so them.
One of them was claiming that he took a swim in there a few years ago and there was just shit everywhere. And Roy was talking about how the essence of civilization is connecting people's bottoms with the ocean, and the French had finally cracked it. It's good stuff.
Well, man, I'm gonna check. Google them as soon as I finish this. I'd be super excited if they're doing something daily, but they must surely be doing something at least weekly, like a weekly catch up.
That thing, club buggery.
And they got Mike Myers to go on it. And do you know that story that because Mike Myers was way bigger than they got an unusual Club Buggery, for everybody who doesn't know, it was like a variety comedy show hosted by Roy and HG in Australia in I think the 90s. And Mike Myers was running around Australia promoting probably an Austin Powers film or maybe even a Wayne's World film. And he was much bigger than they should have been able to get. But somebody got the message to him, to his PR person, who said, look, there's this show called Club Buggery in Australia and they've asked you to be on it. And he just said, based on the name, he said, I'm definitely going on that show because it was called Club Buggery. And then he did. And so there's Mike Myers on Club Buggery, which everybody can check out. That's actually probably quite a good intro to everybody. If you want to see Roy and HG, just Google Roy HG, Mike Myers, Club Buggery. John, why don't you take us out of the show?
Thanks, everybody, for joining us on this week's very special Olympiad episode of Don't Praise the Machine. And we hope you're bringing home a medal wherever you are in the world. It doesn't have to be for sport. It can just be for being a great person and a valued listener of Don't Praise the Machine. And a shout out to hopefully our listeners and our influencers on this show, Roy and HG and Club Buggery. If you haven't watched it, I imagine there's some episodes on YouTube. But enjoy the warm glow that will continue, no doubt, for the duration of the year of the Olympic season. Enjoy that feeling. Hold on to that feeling of togetherness that it brings. and that you can bring to bear on your Don't Praise the Machine community.
Beautiful. And before we go, John, we just also should mention, check out the Patreon that we've launched now. Patreon.com/DPTM. It's the best way to support the podcast and get yourself a few little bonus extras as well. And let me tell you right now, John Maloney is, I'm going to be a little bit busy for the next couple of days, which means you're going to be getting a few emails. If you sign up, you're going to be getting a few emails from John Maloney directly saying, real thanks. Here's what's on the way to you. Let me tell you about it. So everybody,
thanks for being a bronze medal listener. Thanks for being a silver medal listener. And of course, for the very special people, thanks for being a gold medal listener.
And thanks to
emails from me.
Thanks to the people that signed up last week as well. Absolutely. In the spirit of
so good.
In the spirit of the show today, thanks, you guys are absolutely incredible. Incredible. Yeah, is that good, John? Incredible.
That's great. Incredible.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning into the podcast. And we can't wait to see you next week.
The podcast.